Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. We are back with Justine and Kaitlyn, and this is episode 4. Our topic today is everything spiritual? That's the question we're going to be discussing today. First, we will check in with each other with our SPIES check-in: spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, or social. You can pick any of those areas. I will go first and just say spiritual. I'm checking in spiritual. Had a wonderful conversation with my brother yesterday. Really talked about issues of faith and spirituality. And I think I'm just trying to figure some things out in life right now. And I personally am feeling close to God. Not that I'm getting a lot of answers or things figured out per se, but still feeling very close. So that's where I am right now. Justine, you want to check in with us?
Sure. I'll just say emotional, just because it's the weekend time off work. It is, I mean, it's not really snow, but it's icy here with the winter storm. So we also have tomorrow off already. So, kind of just taking a lot of time to rest and recharge has been nice.
Awesome. Yeah, for everybody watching or listening, by the time you see this, the weather should have passed and everything will be good to go. But we are in the South here and not handling cold weather very well. Kaitlyn, how are you doing?
I'm well. I will probably just like piggyback off of Justine. Pretty much the same as like what she said. And now we kind of get a little bit of a break, and so it's nice to kind of just be able to recharge and relax a little bit before we eventually gotta get back to it. So yeah.
Okay. All right, we will jump in. Our last discussion was a pretty good one about relationships and dating and is this the person for you and what question you should ask. So if there are any thoughts on that come back up, feel free to revisit that. But we'll go ahead and jump into this week's topic. Is everything spiritual? We're going to come at this from a couple of different angles. I'm going to start by giving my claim or my position on it. And so I am going to read a couple of things here because I think it's a paradox. I think it's a blend of both. I think the answer is yes and no at the same time. So that's very non-committal of me, I know. But I do think everything is spiritual and everything is not spiritual at the same time. And here's what I mean by that. Everything is spiritual in that God is present, God is all-knowing, God is involved in his creation, in my opinion. That's where I'm coming from. The spirit gives birth to the spirit, so even our connection to God is a spiritual matter. And this includes the gospel, which I believe the gospel truly understood is really something that is revealed to us more than something we intellectually grasp, although I think it's a little bit of both. But I think the gospel really doesn't make sense to our human minds to fully grasp, and so even that I think is spiritual. So I think the spiritual realm is always at play to some level. It's like oxygen, it's like air, it's in the atmosphere at all times. Having said that, I don't think everything is spiritual. We don't need to make everything spiritual and turn everything into a, well, this is because God made this happen or God made that happen kind of thing. I think there are things that are human, there are mundane things, there are mechanical things at work. Lights regulate traffic at intersections. Gravity keeps pulling things down. Those things are natural phenomenon that happen. We make emotional decisions. We have biological processes that are in place, laws of motion, laws of physics, all of that. So not everything is spiritual in that sense. There are things that we do. We make decisions, and it's not necessarily God's will did this or did that or anything like that. That's my take on it. That's my position. I will give an example with the like our human body health wise. I believe it's spiritual in the sense that there is a design to us that is beyond our understanding, that we are grasping and understanding more and more of it. But the human design is something that allows us to have imagination and all of these things that really aren't just naturally explained away very easily, to me anyway. but with my body, I still choose whether or not I exercise and what I eat. And what I eat has an effect on things and whether I exercise or not. So I can't just say, God made me, God heal me, or God made me sick, or God this, or God that, and just turn it into a spiritual matter, if you will. So that's where I'm coming from with things. Just want to lay that out there. And I'm going to go to Justine first and ask, what are your thoughts on anything I've said, or your thoughts to that question, is everything spiritual?
I mean, yes, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think in the church it is pretty typical to make everything spiritual when, yeah, there are a lot more things at play. There's a lot more factors at play. I guess just my kind of personal take on it. I mean, I guess I'll just kind of jump right into it, but my personal take, I think, on this comes a lot from my experience with OCD and religious OCD specifically. And I think that, and I know that, other people have this experience too. And so maybe anyone listening can kind of resonate with this, but yeah, just that I don't think there's anything wrong with, factoring in the spiritual aspect of certain situations or certain circumstances. I do think it can get very tedious when we are saying everything is spiritual, everything is about God, because I think, at least for me, it kind of became something like, um, I was never doing enough spiritually. And that is why things were going wrong, or that's why I wasn't getting healthier, or that's why this, that, or the other. So I think it's a balance between a lot of different things. And I think it is, like you were saying, it's really important to consider everything else that's at play. There's so much more that goes into the human experience than just the spiritual aspect of things. And so I think, yeah, those are my main thoughts, probably initial thoughts with all of that.
All right. Initial thoughts, Kaitlyn, from you?
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with what both of y'all said. Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely don't believe that everything is spiritual all the time. I agree with that. I think that you can really lose sight of kind of just like yourself, also like connections with people when you are kind of having that take with everything. Um, so, and I agree with what Justine was saying. It's very valid. And I like kind of what she was saying, like, oh, because things were going bad in her life or whatever, like that meant because her spiritual journey wasn't strong enough or whatever. And um, not to get into a tangent on it, but just to, you know, say a little bit, it's like, I feel like that is probably a big thing a lot of people hear from spiritual or religious leaders, is like if you come to them with a thing saying you're struggling, they will kind of a lot of the time push off, well, have you prayed about it, well, have you done this, well, have you done this, and it's very religious, instead of just being there and being like a human. I think it can feel very robotic when you're kind of dealing with people like that. So um, honestly, I think just making sure that you're staying true to just you as like a human and being able to respond in a humanly manner with others and not get too lost in that. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. Well, here's my question. So what's the harm in that? So what if people are inclined to respond that way to things? You say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm, going like a personal struggle that you're going with, or you've lost someone, you're grieving something. It could be a dilemma that you're trying to figure out. Am I supposed to do this or that? And the person says to you, well, have you prayed about it? And have you sought what God wants you to do? Or turns it real spiritual really fast. So what? let me just play devil's advocate for a second. So what? Like, what's the harm in that? What do you see as the possible problems there? Either one of you. Well, Kaitlyn, you brought it up. So, oh, Justine, go. Yeah.
The one time I go off mute. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think, well, yeah, and Kaitlyn, Kaitlyn, I'm sure will answer too, but I think that, and again, this is kind of more from personal experience, but I think for me, the harm in that was, so yeah, so I guess just to give like a very concrete example, if someone is struggling with their health, I guess whether that's physical or mental, it might not really matter, and they come to a pastor with that because their faith is really important to them. I don't think that there's anything wrong with, first going to, well, have you prayed about it? Have you, I know sometimes also it'll be a thing of like, they'll ask, is there anything in your life that may be, I don't know, distracting you or whatever that might be. I don't think there's anything wrong with that being the first thing you go to, especially if you are a person of the faith and your faith is important to you. However, I think when it gets dangerous is when that's the only thing that's considered, because if you have cancer or if you have, a serious mental illness that needs medication or therapy or something else, I think that there's so much that goes into that, and it might be important for you to keep praying about it and for you to continue to rely on your faith. It might also be important for you to go to therapy. It might also be important for you to get on medication for a little while. Like, I think there's so much that goes into it, and I think that when we only focus on the spiritual or religious aspect, we're completely ignoring, well, you can completely ignore the physical and biological and, emotional, mental, like all these other parts of the human experience that are also going to help you, get better possibly. So,
Uh, have you heard, you said something about people will say, have you prayed about it? Or is there something in your life that's distracting you or whatever? And I don't know. Have you heard people say, well, maybe there's sin in your life, or maybe there's something that's causing God to be almost like cursing you in a way, like causing this to happen?
yeah, that's actually kind of what I was getting at, but I didn't have the words. But yes, yeah, is there
Okay.
like sin in your life that may be causing this darkness or, yeah, however the pastor chooses to kind of phrase that. But yeah, I've definitely heard that before.
Okay. Kaitlyn, did you have any other thoughts on what she was just saying, or the whole question about is there harm?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what she said. I think when that's the only solution that they have for you and there's no other options, or they think that those other options might, I mean, because there is also people, who are religious who don't necessarily believe in therapy and medication and all those things. They think a lot of they could believe that mental illness is just a spiritual warfare and that it's not an actual chemical imbalance in your brain. So I would also argue that, it's like you could be dealing with people like that. Um, but yeah, I mean that's kind of more where I would agree and say that's where it becomes harmful instead of helpful. So
Okay, so give me some insights into, this is the generational piece here, maybe. What would you go to first as far as you're trying to help somebody with an issue and you think this might be where they do need therapy, they do need something, uh, this is more of a mental health matter. Does the spiritual component play in at all in the conversation or advice, or not really, and why or why not?
do you just want me to go?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Um, I think that when at least, okay, this is my personal view on it and how I would go about it. If someone's coming to me with, explaining and expressing that they have a lot of, it could be a mental health issue, my first thought is not prayer. My first thought is to first and foremost listen, hear them out, be someone who can, provide comfort, um, but then at that same time, I would also provide a resource for them, which would be, have you sought therapy? Have you, you know, maybe thought about going to a psychologist? Just those kind of outlets, because I know that there's obviously not much that I can do because I am not well equipped to deal with that, right? Like there's only so much I can say, provide to where it then gets to the point where I'm like, okay, this is no longer something that I am able to actually help you with. And that's okay, but to be able to point them in that direction. Um, and then I feel like once they're, seeking that help, I feel like it's appropriate to then maybe mix in prayer or whatever it is that they could also, that might be something that they feel helps alongside of their own treatment, right? So yeah.
Right. Justine, did you have any more on that?
Um, I don't think so. I agree with that too. I think a few years ago, if someone were to come to me, like my first response probably would have been, something having to do with prayer or religion in general. But I think now, especially because of my own personal experience, it would be, um, yeah, like just, and also I guess just maybe kind of getting a gauge of where they're at, because I think I will say another aspect of it is I think it kind of all depends on what they value, because some people might be struggling with their mental health and they do find faith to be the most comforting or the most helpful for them. So I'm not gonna, sit there and invalidate that just because my experience was different. However, I think if they're in the church and they're coming to me with that and they're just expressing a lot of pain, I would also, like Kaitlyn said, want to point them to other possible resources. Not that they have to do anything, not that therapy is also definitely going to help, right? Because again, it's always a balance and sometimes it's a mixture of a lot of different things. So I think that the biggest thing would be to validate and kind of just really allow them to share where they're at personally and then kind of go from there.
Let me ask this question from another angle, just because I know both of you have talked kind of about where you are in your spiritual journeys. Sorry, and I don't know exactly where you land on this as far as what you believe right now in terms of God and all that. Does God care? That's my question. So like the little things in life, you're going through life, tomorrow, typically if schools weren't closed around here and works and places weren't closed, typically we all go to our jobs, we would show up, we would do our things, and we're like trying to make sense of everything during the day. To what extent does God care or intervene in the daily mundane things? Justine.
I mean, yes, I think, yeah, of course he cares. I think that, I don't know, the intervening is a little bit of that I think that's something I don't really think about as much anymore, because I think for me, I guess God or, a higher power and faith in general has kind of just become more of like an internal thing that I carry with me. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's more so like I have, this might sound really, I don't know if this is gonna sound right, but it's like I feel at this point in my life that I have the tools that I need. And, if there is a situation that I'm unsure how to handle and I'm able to handle it, or if I'm just going through a really difficult time and I'm able to pull myself out of it, like different things like that. To me, that's kind of what I see as God at this point versus him intervening in situations. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that I think that there are a lot of, small ways that God could show that he cares, even if that's simply, the way that we're provided for every day, or the way that we have a job to go to, the way that we have a home to come back to, like different things like that. I don't know, that's so simplified, but I think for me right now, like that's kind of where I'm at with all of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Kaitlyn?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think God obviously cares. But yeah, I will say that intervening is a little hard to answer because I don't know, like I feel like a lot of people argue, the whole thing of like, well, you know, he doesn't intervene when a bunch of bad things happen to people, or like death or whatever it is, right? And a lot of the times I feel like we do see in society it is a lot of good people that like bad things will happen to, but then there's a lot of bad people that like good things happen to them. So it's kind of weird, Um so yeah, I don't know. I feel like in certain ways it feels like God intervenes, or maybe he protects you in like I don't know, for me personally, like I feel like I've been protected a lot in life from certain things, even though bad things have happened to me. I feel like there were moments that I had been in that like in some weird way, like I feel like something worse could have happened to me, but then I was somehow protected, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. If that really answers the question.
No, that's good. I mean, I think it's like a super simple question on the surface, but it doesn't take long at all to get really into a gray area and like really, ooh, I don't know that there's a one answer one way or another. How about this? I'm going to throw this out there because this just popped into my head. What is your reaction to the phrase "everything happens for a reason"? Who wants to go first on that one? Sorry, I said before we recorded that I would tell you who was going to go first, but I just popped that question on you, and I don't want to like put somebody on the spot.
I'll go. Um, I agree with that. I do think that everything happens for a reason. I feel like though, however, I feel like a lot of us get upset with that because there could be things that happen that we wish didn't happen. But then I feel like you realize later on that some things, like it's like you'll realize kind of later on, like a year or two from now, from the situation that happened, you're like, wait, that's actually a good thing that happened, Or it's like, this negative thing that, whatever. It's like, oh, actually, maybe even though it was so negative, it kind of helped make like it kind of prepared me for maybe something else that was going to happen, and now I knew how to handle it better. Or um so yeah, I don't know. I agree with that.
Okay, Justine, tell her she's wrong. Go ahead.
I agree with it. However, I think that there is a time and place for that phrase, and I think you have to be very careful with that because I think some people, especially in religious settings, will use that. For example, this is a really extreme example, but a parent loses a child, and then that's what is said to the parent. Like things like that, that's not, that's not the time or place to be saying things like that, in my opinion. I think that and whenever you say that phrase, it kind of just reminds me of those Bible verses that, kind of point out that if there's, I don't remember the references now, but like if there's reasons that you're suffering, God will bring good out of it. Or if you're going through troubled times, that means that, you know, that you should count that joy. I don't remember all the verses for that, but so I agree with it, but that I will say that does make me cringe a little bit, like that phrase, just because I'm kind of like, ooh, I don't know. I just know that I have been told that before, and I know other people have been told that before, when it's kind of like, maybe that wasn't, completely appropriate or helpful to say it at the time. But yeah, of course, like Kaitlyn said, once you look back and see for yourself, okay, I can see why that happened. I can see that that happened for a reason now. But I think to maybe say that to someone else when they're in a lot of pain is maybe not, like, I don't really agree with that, if that makes sense. But I don't know.
No, wait,
Yeah.
wait,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I wanted to
Yes, go ahead.
preface by saying when I also, because obviously I agree with what Justine's saying. I agree. I don't think it's ever something you should verbalize out loud. So when I was kind of saying that, I just more mean that's something that I believe mentally, right? But that's never something that I want to say out loud to other people, because obviously, yeah, that can become incredibly insensitive too, depending on when you're saying that. But I just mean more so like as a personal thing, like a personal belief, right?
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot of situations that I went through that I was really angry about, or like they were really negative, and I wish the outcome was different. But then when I let years pass and I was able to grow as a person and reflect, it was like, actually, that's a good thing that that happened. Or like whether it was like a friendship ended or whatever it was, it's like, that's a good thing, because if, that relationship or whatever was still in my life, like I probably would not have been at the place where I wanted to be as a person. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of more mean it
Mm.
in that way, definitely not in the sense of like a religious aspect or like telling people, yeah. So
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the distinction also is like, I associate that a lot with religion. I think you might associate it differently. So I think that's also a big thing, because I think it's, again, those Bible verses. That's what I think of when I think of that phrase, because it's like
Yeah.
a Bible verses about, there's the one in Genesis about, I think it's when Joseph is talking to his brothers, but what God meant for evil, or sorry, what you meant for evil, God turned into good. Like that, I just saw that. I don't want to use the word weaponized because that seems like a strong word, but like I saw that verse, I guess, just misused a lot in
Mhm.
situations where it's kind of like, that's something that still shouldn't have happened. Like, sure, can we heal from it? Sure, can, we use our story to help others? Yes, but I don't know that that's like, you know, appropriate things to say to people. But yeah, I think that I just associate it more with religion. So.
So many thoughts, so many things are intertwining here, like coming together. First, real quick tangent. No, I'll forget my other thought if I say that. Uh, my first thought to Kaitlyn's comment, it makes me think that it's really not so much about does everything happen for a reason, like in the moment, but whether or not we interpret it that way later. Like we end up, because we all do this, right? We all are writing our own narratives in a sense. We're telling the story of our life in our own mind the way we want it to be. So certain things unfold a certain way, but we kind of, well, here's really why that happened, and sometimes to our own advantage, sometimes to our disadvantage. That's an interesting thing. I'll just let that sit there. I won't go any more into that. My other thought about what you just said about Bible verses, we'll have to do an episode on the Bible, because if people haven't already, I actually have this because I just went through it again. This is a very controversial book. People are might not like it, Pagan Christianity, but it talks about the history of different church practices and stuff, which people don't might not like that. But there's a chapter in there towards the end about proof texting. This whole idea of how we just pull verses out and use them, and how it's become the norm. Like that's how everybody approaches the Bible, and it's such a shallow, almost disrespectful way to approach the Bible if you really want to take the Bible seriously. So that just came to my mind too. Okay, that's there's no extra charge for those thoughts. Here's my question on two things. One, if I change the word spiritual to religious, does it matter at all? Like if I say, well, everything's religious, are you more apt to agree or disagree with it than if I said spiritual? Just kind of a quick yes or no. What do you think on that? Let's go with Kaitlyn.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to push the unmute. I would be quick to say that I disagree with that because I see religion as like a bunch of rules and more of like a structure, whereas spiritual, I feel like there's a lot of fluidity in that and just more freedom. Yeah.
All right, very good. Justine, you got a yes or no on that one? What do you think?
I would be more inclined to agree if you said everything is spiritual versus everything is religious.
Okay. Okay. Last question topic. And you're going to have to help me through this. This is something we've talked about kind of offline a little bit. And it's you're in a religious environment, and how do you keep your sense of self, or what does it look like to lose your sense of self in that? So unpack that for me a little bit on what you mean. I'm going to have Kaitlyn go first, only because I know at one point we talked offline and she had a thought on that.
Okay, yeah. So I think what that looks like when you kind of lose your sense of self in religion, right? Or in your faith, whatever it is. It's kind of like you almost come across like very robotic, like with the way that you talk to people. Um, you kind of can't have a conversation with someone without mentioning God with like everything, right? So like if I were to ask somebody, like this is like an example of someone who I feel like I've asked, like, who are you? Tell me about yourself, right? They would start the conversation with, well, God says I am, or, well, because I'm a follower of God, I am this way, or I am this person, and this is whatever. And it's like, well, that's not what I asked you. I didn't ask you who God said you. I said, who are you? Because I do feel like you should be able to say what you are. Like you should know yourself, right? It shouldn't be, well, God says I'm this, or I'm only this way because God made me this way. It's like, well, no, you are you, like you should know, right? Like you should have a sense of, your kind of your personality, right? Like what do you like, dislike? Like what are characteristics that you have that you yourself have adopted, right, throughout life. um I just don't think that God has to be brought into every conversation, especially when you're describing yourself, you know yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm processing that. I'm processing. Justine, do you have more to make me process?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And this is like one that I actually feel like me and Kaitlyn have also talked about, just in conversations that we've had because, and I think she would agree with this, and that's okay to admit this, but like I was one of those people who I had no sense of self outside of the church, outside of the faith, and that was extremely damaging to me, or I believe it was, like looking back now, because it was always, and I think also another thing with sense of self and the church or faith or religion or whatever is you I'm trying to think of how to explain this. Um and I like just completely lost my train of thought.
I think I know what you're gonna say, but yes.
Well, I don't know what I was gonna say. Okay, I was talking
Help her out.
whoever's listening gets to witness this for the first
uh uh like
Um,
that I feel like a lot of people, especially when they do have that kind of, yeah, it's like where they have no sense of self, and they kind of start saying like, well, I'm only this way because God, like by the grace of God, it is kind of, it also, whether people realize it or not, that comes across very like morbid in a sense. And it is kind of like people feel like they're not good enough without God's love or whatever it is. So it is like a way, it actually like people might say like, oh, well, God will make you more secure and will make you feel like better and all these things. But like what I feel like I've witnessed is a lot of like the opposite of that, right? Like I've witnessed people kind of actually feel more shameful about themselves. They felt like they're not good enough. And like it's just the way that they talk about it. It doesn't like it's I feel like if anything, it kind of actually might be a reason why it turns people away from Christianity, because it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to feel that way about myself, Like it sounds like they're all pretty like self-loathing is kind of, I think that's the word I've been trying to think of this whole time and I couldn't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of that, I feel. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think I was gonna say something about shame. Just that I think there's a lot of shame. I also think there's a learned not learned helplessness, that's not the right word, but I know something I heard a lot too growing up in the church was like that weakness was a good thing because that was where God could show his strength. So it's almost like it was praised to be weak, or it was a good thing if you, and I don't know, I think we might have talked about this in other episodes, but to just it's almost like it was, I don't know, I want to like tread lightly when I say this, but like I think some churches or some people, some religious people, there's like value in feeling worthless. I know that sounds so weird to say, but there's value in feeling worthless because it's like that is what keeps them reliant on God and reliant on the faith, but not in a positive way. I think that, and honestly, I think that that's how people lose their sense of self in the faith, because it's almost like just this taught ingrained thing, at least the way I grew up or the way I feel like I grew up, that is very, you are nothing without this. You are nothing without God. You can't do anything without him. Um, and that's, I mean, I can see how, can kind of see maybe what they're trying to do or trying to go for, but it's kind of like that's extremely damaging, especially if you are told that like from childhood and you're basically, what if you decide you don't believe that anymore? What if you decide you want to pursue something else, or you want to have something else that you value in life, or whatever that might look like? So I think that, yeah, I don't know. I think that it is unfortunately the way that the church is nowadays. I think it is a little bit easier to lose your sense of self. And I think that that's honestly why, well, at least that's why I did. I won't speak for anyone else, but why I started deconstructing, because it was like, yeah, I feel like I don't have anything outside of this. And yeah, so
Wow, there's a lot there. I am processing. And I know we need to start wrapping up here. So I'm gonna go off the cuff here and just try to process this a little bit out loud, because I I'm trying to make sense of it in terms of like what I believe. So I do believe, I think it's in John 15, this is described as this whole analogy using the vine and the branches. And the teaching there is basically Jesus says, abide in me, just remain in me and I'll remain in you. Like that you remain in me, I'll remain in you. But there's this verse in there that's thrown in that says, apart from me, you can do nothing. And I'm trying to process this in, because I agree with what you all are saying. And so I don't want to take that verse out of context and use it to say that people are nothing without God. I think because I think the ultimate teaching of the whole vine and branches is a beautiful teaching, because it's basically saying you don't have to earn your way to grace. You don't have to earn your way to God's love. Just remain, just be there, and I'll be there too. Like, we're in relationship with each other. I love you as you are. And also, I do think without God's spirit, inspiration, empowerment, we are very limited in what we can do as human beings. So what I'm trying to do here off the cuff is think through this in terms of how can both things be true at the same time in a way. And what I'm hearing you all say, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing you all say is this idea of, it's almost like God is telling somebody, without me, you're nothing. Just remember, like, if you stray, if you separate, if you have confidence in yourself without acknowledging me or something, just remember it all comes from me. I'm the source of everything good in you. And you, like that kind of thing, which is negative and unhealthy, versus like a parent to a child, in the sense of, I don't know, this could be way off, and so I'm a little worried about just saying this without having thought this through. But I'm going to use the example of like my daughter. Okay, so I'm just going to pick one of them. So my daughter, I am her father, and I am a parent that, as a parent, gave life. Like, so there is that, like, she wouldn't be here, without a parent. Never mind. Anyway, but she's here, and there's ultimate love, and it's kind of goes back to the vine and branch. Hey, just remain, and I'll remain. Like, for the rest of your life, from the first cry as a baby, from then on, just be you. Like, just be you. I'm gonna be me, and we're gonna love each other. And so there's that connection ultimately that says, apart from me, like, I don't know. But at the same time, then she grows up and she develops all these skills and talents and work habits. She makes mistakes. She makes choices. Some of those are good, some of those are bad, and all that. And that's her being her and developing that sense of self. And yet, ultimately, at the same time, there is that connection back to where life came from, in a way. And that there's kind of like always going to be my DNA in her, in a way, just like there's always going to be that image of God or that spirit in us, but we can still develop a sense of self at the same time. I don't know. I hope that was close. I'm gonna have to process that a little bit more, but that's kind of where I'm gonna land that plane. So that's gonna be my last thought on it. You are free and welcome to share any final thoughts either of you have. Any of you want to respond to that at all, or either one of you? Just unmute.
Uh, I mean, I do think, yeah, the vine and the branches analogy has always been very interesting to me as well. And I think, I actually, forgot that specifically it said, apart from me, you can do nothing. But I mean, I don't know. I think kind of to use your analogy, yeah, it's kind of something that beginning of life, whether that's from a parent or, whatever, that's always with us. I think, and this is like really weird because this is a really hard distinction to make, but I think the church just will, I don't know, like, is so quick to just take take verses like that, like, apart from me, you can do nothing. And it's like literally nothing. Like, you can't do anything, or you can't do anything good. And again, I think, though, I will say, like, full disclosure, I think for me, part of this is like from my, own experience with religious OCD, that like I myself took that to an extreme because of the things that I struggle with and the way that my brain is wired. And so I think that I don't know. I think that it's just important to acknowledge, though, that there is goodness in people that might not be related to religion, and that's okay. Or there might be times where, you feel proud of yourself for doing something, and you maybe don't give full credit to God or whatever. And like that's also okay because you also do, just as a human, have strengths and, you know, good qualities about you that I don't know. Yeah, this is like, this conversation could go on forever because it is so, there's just a lot. It's so complex. And I feel like I have a lot of thoughts. So maybe I'll just also not. I'll also land the plane there.
Mark.
You unmuted, Kaitlyn. I was waiting for you.
No, your face. I was like, okay.
My face was
Okay.
welcoming the great thought that was
Sorry.
about to come across. I was like, oh,
No,
here she comes. She's gonna drop this nugget of wisdom that we're all gonna go, ah, that's it.
no,
That's it.
no. I, yeah, I mean, kind of just like what Justine was saying. Yeah, I mean, like, I agree with that too. Like, yeah, I think that is the biggest thing too, is just like, I feel like when you're so heavily involved with religion, yeah, I feel like it's like you feel like almost like you have to make sure that you always give thanks to God or credit God. But yeah, it's like not everything kind of, at least I personally believe, not everything is like from God. Like you also as a human do things on your own, and like you deserve to feel like, you know, like the credit, right? Like you deserve as like a human from the choices you made or whatever it is. um and it's kind of like, I don't know, for me personally, just to get into like another little spiel about that, or to go even further with that, it's kind of like growing up personally, like I, you know, might have had a parent who would try to take credit for, you know, me as a person and like the qualities that I have and the things that I possess. But it was like, it actually didn't come from them. Like, yes, I came from my parent, but the qualities and the characteristics that I possessed, it was from me, like how I am as a person and the choices that I made to get to that point as a person. So I would even connect it with something like that as well. Like not everything is, you know, coming from someone else. Like sometimes it is like you, and you should feel like you're allowed to do that without there being like this shame or guilt or whatever. So yeah.
Whew, that is a lot for us to unpack there. There's so much stuff. I don't know if we answered any questions or if we just created more questions, but I want to thank everybody for listening and joining us in this conversation. I definitely want to hear thoughts and feedback from people. Um, is everything spiritual? Tell us what you think. Does God care? Tell us what you think. Is God involved in all the things? How do you keep a sense of self? Did you agree or disagree with anything that we said? Um, all of that stuff. I would welcome any thoughts. I had another thing that I was just going to say and I forgot it. Oh my gosh. Our next conversation is going to be specifically about prayer, and what in the world does all of what we talked about today mean when it comes to prayer then, and all of that. So other than that, I think the only conclusion we can reach today is that the three of us each will definitely need therapy and counseling, and go from there. Thank you so much for listening and being with us today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.